Greetings, sisters, and welcome to Wonder Woman, Warrior for Peace. My name is Angela, and this is episode 14. Welcome back. Just a couple of updates to go over. I got a lot of positive feedback on my basically fanfiction version of the Wonder Woman origin in the last episode, so thank you for that. That was really encouraging. And if you follow the show, you've probably seen this already, but I did a unboxing video for the May 2017 Legion of Collectors Wonder Woman box, and you can find that on the show's YouTube channel. Alright, we're starting with the pre-crisis, Sensation Comics Volume 1, Issue 12. Cover date was December 1942. Writer was Charles Moulton, who we know was really William Moulton Marston, and the artist was Harry G. Peter. And I'm reading this from Wonder Woman Archives Volume 1. Colonel Darnell has received a letter, which he shows to his secretary. It's from Leroy Fontaine, president of Supreme Pictures, about his plans to make a Wonder Woman movie titled America's Guardian Angel. He wants Darnell to convince the superhero to star, but the colonel doesn't know how to reach her. Diana recommends having Etta contact her with the mental radio, and soon the Amazon is in a meeting with Darnell and the producer. She thinks an actress will do a better job, but Fontaine insists the nation wants to see her. And once she learns that Major Trevor happens to be on the West Coast investigating a case, she agrees, provided she can borrow Diana Prince as her secretary and her friends from Holiday College can be in the film. The men agree, and soon Secretary Prince is in Hollywood making preparations for the star's arrival. She visits the bungalow where the Amazon will stay and meets the maid, Yvette. But when Yvette notices her bracelets, she mistakes Diana for a fellow slave of Baroness von Gunther, rolling back her sleeves to show the marks left by the manacles von Gunther's slaves wear. She confides in Diana that although the Baroness was killed when the cavalry attacked their submarine base, she was brought back to life with her electrical resurrection device. Hiding her shock, Diana asks what Yvette's orders are, but apparently telling anyone, even another slave, is forbidden by their mistress. Knowing she's expected to arrive by rail, Wonder Woman races back east, leaping aboard the moving train. Admirers crowd the station and roads to greet her, and she leads a parade to the studio where she's carried on the shoulders of extras all the way to her bungalow. She meets Ben Black, the movie's director, who tells her about the security precautions they've taken, and he introduces her to Yvette, whom he says is completely trustworthy. Once alone and reclining on a divan, Yvette offers the Amazon a cocktail, but instead she asks for tea, thinking it'd be more difficult to drug when it's made right in front of her. But just to be safe, she dumps the cup back into the pot as soon as the maid leaves the room, then fakes unconsciousness. When Yvette returns, she tries to bind Wonder Woman in her own lasso, but the Amazon catches her wrists and confronts her. Suddenly the maid recognizes Wonder Woman's bracelets and realizes she must be Diana Prince. But before she can get caught in the magic lasso, she downs a bottle of hydrocyanic acid, killing her instantly. Wonder Woman gives the pot of tea to Black to be analyzed, and he vows to double security. At the studio, they're on a boat with lots of cranes, filming Wonder Woman's underwater escape from burial at sea. She will be tied up and put into a tank with glass sides, then lowered underwater before she escapes. She examines the trunk and is dismayed to find that it's strapped to an underwater mine, which the director claims is a dud filled with cement to weigh the thing down, but then she finds the trigger wire fed up into the box. She keeps the discovery to herself, however, wanting to let it play out so she can find the people trying to kill her. The camera starts rolling, and she's tied by two men with very, very good acting in such a way that if she tries to escape, she'll be strangled. They also secretly tie the mine's tripwire to her wrist, ensuring that if she moves too much, she'll blow herself up. The box is closed and lowered into the water, with the camera inside a diving bell watching her every move. She manages to tense her neck enough that the rope doesn't cut off her air supply, then snaps the cord binding her legs. She then carefully flips over on her back, loosening the tripwire enough to free her hands. She kicks open the lid and swims out at the same time as the director decides she's been down too long and starts pulling up the camera so they can raise the box without the lines getting tangled. Wonder Woman sees the diving bell dragged upward, and, to test if she was right, ties the line for the box to the tripwire, then swims for her life. Sure enough, when they go to raise the trunk, the boat is rocked by an explosion, which shoots the Amazon out of the water, falling smack dab on the director. As she tries to help him recover from the impact, one of the crew yells that the supposed actors who tied her up are fleeing in a speedboat, proving their guilt. Meanwhile, Steve is investigating a Chinese laundry, sure that its staff are actually Japanese spies. He and an assistant follow the suspects as they put out to sea in a motorboat, landing on a tiny barren island, really more like a large rock that just juts out of the water. But when the soldiers arrive, their quarry is nowhere to be found, even though their abandoned boat is moored to the rock. Baffled, the Major goes to Wonder Woman's bungalow, but her secretary Diana tells him the Amazon is unavailable. Diana sneaks into another room and calls Steve as Wonder Woman, telling him to take a large group of men to investigate, as she's sure there must be a trap door on the island. He ignores her advice, however, going alone in an attempt at stealth. But when he gets there, the spy's boat is still floating in the same spot, but the island is gone. Going over and over the place it was, his ship suddenly runs aground. At first he thinks the island was covered by the tide, but as he watches, it rises up out of the ocean swifter than naturally possible. He tries to investigate, but is caught in the beam of a spotlight, and welcomed by his Japanese hosts. The Major tries to fight back, but is outnumbered, and his captors lead him down a tunnel hidden by a boulder. The next day, Diana calls Ben Black to say that Wonder Woman is still recovering and won't be able to shoot that day. The Amazon then calls Etta, telling her that Steve is missing, and she's sending the college girls instructions in the mail. Wonder Woman leaps over the studio wall in order to avoid producers interfering with her investigation, but she's grabbed by a crowd of women extras, all claiming that she must come with them for a picnic on their yacht. When she asks how people who get paid little more than minimum wage to be in the background of films can afford a yacht, they reply that high society now enjoys working on movies, and the boat belongs to one of the Vandergilts. Get it? Vandergilt instead of Vanderbilt? And that's gilt as in covered with gold instead of guilt like he's guilty, Your Honor. Oh, the cleverness of Marston. Anyway, Wonder Woman decides to go along, as the boat can help her look for Steve. But once aboard, the girls start wrapping her with flowers, and their scent makes her collapse like a Kansas girl, and her little dog, too, in a field of poppies. But just before she conks out, she sees the director, Ben Black, ordering the girls to shove the soporific flowers in her nose and mouth. When she awakens, her bracelets are chained together, and she's greeted by Baroness Paula von Gunther. Meanwhile, Etta has received Wonder Woman's parcel, which contains the Lasso of Truth, and directs her to use it to capture Ben Black, since the superhero suspects that he was behind the attacks. The Holiday girls learn from his secretary that he's at the pier, and so arrive just in time to stop him from escaping by literally standing in the road so he can't drive off. He tries running on foot to his private boat, but as he leaps, Etta snags him with the lasso. They all board the ship, and Black is compelled to take them to the island, which he explains works like a submarine, even though it's currently submerged. They dive, the lasso still wrapped around the director, and he opens the tunnel so they can enter. While this is going on, Wonder Woman is being mocked by the Baroness, but then the Amazon easily breaks the chains keeping her bracelets together. Before she can attack, Von Gunther reveals that Steve is in a trap, with a 2.5-ton weight over his head, ready to drop at the flip of a switch if Wonder Woman refuses to surrender, telling the Baroness how to chain her properly and submitting to the Spymaster's training. Just then, a stout arm rounds the corner and grabs the woman operating the switch, pulling her away by her hair. It's Etta and the Holiday girls, and they help Wonder Woman take out Von Gunther's minions, despite being outnumbered. Wonder Woman tells the freed Steve she wishes she could use the lasso to command the Baroness to help the Allies, but he replies that he can't, because the woman is a captive of the military. Sometime later, the head of the studio is trying to convince Wonder Woman to return to the picture, offering her a new director and triple the salary, but she tells him to give the money to Etta and finish the film with her double, as her acting is too Amazonian. Whatever that means. A rainforest pun, maybe? Yeah, I don't know. So, yeah, what great timing! A Wonder Woman movie, all the way back here in 1942. And sure, the movie that's coming out next month does not use the title of America's Guardian Angel. Yeah, I don't think it really would work. Maybe for the sequel? Yeah, no, probably not. But still, it's really cool to realize that the idea of a Wonder Woman movie has been around almost the entire length of the character's history. And now, finally, we are, well, at the time I'm recording this, less than 2 weeks away. It's really exciting. They make a big deal in this issue about all the women who Von Gunther has captured and brainwashed, and forced to wear manacles, having to wear long sleeves in order to hide the marks from those chains. Like, oh, she's wearing long sleeves in this hot weather. She must be one of Von Gunther's slaves, and, oh, you should have recognized that they were my slaves. They all are wearing long sleeves. And it just comes off as a little weird, because here you have Secretary Diana talking to the maid about how weird it is that she's wearing long sleeves, when Diana herself is wearing sleeves just as long, and the guy she was talking to in the panel before is also wearing long sleeves in the California heat. I mean, flipping through the pages, most of the people are wearing long sleeves, except for well, of course, Wonder Woman doesn't have sleeves, and the crowd at the parade, the women are wearing short sleeves. But it just seemed like an odd detail, you know? Oh, long sleeves, it means they're hiding something. I was pretty surprised to see that Von Gunther's electrical resurrection undead machine was brought back. Silly me, I thought that was just going to be one quick little plot device type of thing, you know, oh, she was killed in the electric chair, so her electric machine has brought her back. But no, it's resurrected her from drowning, even. And I mean, if she's clever enough to escape any prison and has a machine that can resurrect her no matter how she died, then as a raider, you don't even have to worry about coming up with a new reason every time she shows up again why she's back after Wonder Woman defeated her the last time. I do remember thinking when they were setting up these stunts, you know, they are really not paying attention to any safety at all. I mean, I get that she's a superhero and has super strength, but you would think there would be some kind of, you know, safety mechanism or escape switch or something in case stuff goes wrong with these stunts. But then again, the director did turn out to be evil, so I guess maybe that was intentional? I love that we're keeping up with the continuity, that Von Gunther knows that welding chains to Wonder Woman's bracelets can stop her, but she doesn't know the exact detail that it has to be a man who does it. I mean, Ishchi, the Japanese agent in one of the previous issues, mentioned that he'd learned it from her, but then he made the mistake that apparently Von Gunther made here in that it was a woman who did the welding instead of a man. And actually, the Japanese spies that Steve was following, one of them turns out to be named Ichi, I-C-H-I, but they only say his name once, and I was wondering if that was actually intended to be Ishchi from issue 12. Unfortunately, in the style of 40s comic books, the caricature of a Japanese man is so strong that it's impossible to tell if he's a different character just by looking at him. This is the first time that we have someone realizing that Diana Prince is Wonder Woman, and lo and behold, she figures it out from the one thing they both wear, the bracelets. We get a confirmation here that Wonder Woman doesn't drink when she gets offered this cocktail, and not just because of the poison in it. The reference to the Vandergilts is, of course, a nod to the Vanderbilts, the famous uber-rich, high-society American family. Oh, and one thing that I thought was interesting, when they start out filming the underwater scene, they say they're recreating her escape from Burial at Sea. Flipping back through the book, I can't really find a time when she was tied up and thrown into a box and then thrown into the ocean. I mean, this movie is supposed to be the true story of her adventures, so I thought that was a little strange. I did find that there is a Wonder Woman story called Burial at Sea, but it came out in 1978, and it was the story of how Hippolyta and the Amazons escaped from Hercules. This issue has a really iconic Etta Candy moment when she and the Holiday Girls show up and are beating up all of Von Gunther's slaves. Wonder Woman tells her that she's wonderful, and she's like, "Yes, I am, and all of my success is thanks to candy." So, really fun issue. I'm going to give it 4 stars. Moving on to Post-Crisis, we have Wonder Woman Volume 2, Issue 14, For the Glory of Gaia. Cover date is March 1988. George Perez was the plotter and layouts. Len Wein was the scripter. Bruce D. Patterson was the finisher. John Costanza was the letterer. Carl Gafford was the colorist. And Karen Berger was the editor. And I'm reading this from the Wonder Woman by George Perez omnibus. Wonder Woman flies back through a portal to the cavern beneath Themyscira, her mission to avenge Pan's death complete. She arrives to see Heracles, whom she recognizes from the stories, as well as the giant stone version of him from last issue, holding the entire weight of Paradise Island on his back. At his feet is her mother, alive but injured and unconscious. When she asks why the island is so difficult for him when he's held the entire sky at one point, he replies that the stories about him had a tendency to be sensationalized, and that she and her mother must get out at once. Diana scoops the queen up in her arms and flies to the surface, reflecting that despite the wrongs he did to her sisters, the nobility that she read about in Man's World is still there. We next see a group of Amazons looking at the rubble of the doorway they guarded for so long, realizing that the monsters contained are no more. Suddenly they spot Hippolyta in the wreckage, and going to her, find she's clutching Wonder Woman's tiara. though hopefully not too hard since, it's sharp enough to decapitate someone with one toss. They wonder what became of its owner, and then we see her zooming back to the son of Zeus, offering to help him bear the weight of the island. He refuses, saying this is his punishment by his father for failing his labors. Diana, tears in her eyes, replies that he's holding her sister's lives, and she won't let him be the only one to do so. But then Zeus and the other Olympians appear, saying that Gaia's glory has been restored, and the Amazons have proven themselves worthy by their queen and princess forgiving Heracles. The Amazon goddesses free them from their punishment of guarding against the darkness the cavern used to contain, just as Zeus releases his son from his burden, saying the island will now be supported by Gaia's power. Diana picks up the demigod and flies them out, wondering why he wasn't taken up to Olympus, to which Heracles replies that he has one final labor to complete. On the surface, there's an explosion, and the tunnel caves in. At first the Amazons think the demon plague has escaped, but out of the pure, divine light steps their princess, still carrying Zeus's son. The Amazons are understandably taken aback at seeing their longtime foe, but both Diana and Hippolyta say they must hear him out. Diana lowers him to the ground, and for the first time in history, man sets foot on Paradise Island. He explains that all those years ago he'd refused to believe that the Amazons' message was peaceful equality, and let anger keep him from seeing the truth, leading to his horrific actions. He humbly asks their forgiveness, and after a moment's hesitation they burst into tears, welcoming him. The gods watch from their mountain, and Zeus and Hera share a tender moment, talking about how much they've changed recently, and renewing their commitment to each other. All the gods are celebrating, except Apollo, who's finally able to mourn the loss of his son. Athena and Demeter reflect that they must remember the lessons they learned this day, and strive to be worthy of their power. Back in Oklahoma, Steve is searching the attic for mementos of the past. Etta pops her head in, telling him dinner will be ready in 5 minutes, with Aunt Edna preparing a special plate to accommodate the lieutenant's diet. Steve gazes at the photo of his parents, saying he always wanted his father to be proud of him, and that he stayed in the Air Force despite his reservations because he didn't want to be thought of as a quitter. Etta grabs his hands in hers and tells him he's the most committed man she knows, but that leaving the service if it's not right for him anymore won't make him a failure. She's tried to make him stay because she's still passionate about the job, but now realizes that was selfish and he needs to do what's right for him. She says she'll miss him, though, and that she's been in love with him for a long time. He replies that he loves her too, and they share a passionate kiss that ends up with both of them lying on the floor. It does not say if they were late to dinner. We return to the Amazons' Island of Healing, where the queen is recovering from her injuries. Philippus, all but unrecognizable without her armor, pays a visit, and the two reconcile after their battle, saying that with the evil beneath their home purged, there's no more need for conflict. A few days later, we see the Themysciran Colosseum, where all the Amazons are gathered in celebration. Heracles joins the queen, princess, and captain in their private box, and they watch as the Amazons pile pieces of armor and weapons on the altar, burning them as a symbol of the peace they hope their future now holds. Later that day, Diana is exhilarating in the joy that is flying above the island, and from the ground Heracles and her mother watch. He says he can see her mother in her, and asks if he's the father. When she tells him no, he's glad, saying that something so beautiful shouldn't have been the result of his violation. He still finds the queen beautiful, but now respects her as an equal, and she recognizes the sincerity in his voice. He asks for a kiss of forgiveness, which she's more than happy to give, and they share a tender moment while I yell, "Nope!" and resist the urge to throw the book across the room. He tells her that he hopes someday his crime can be completely erased from her mind, so she can understand his true feelings, and she replies that she's still a woman, but at the moment her duties as queen keep her occupied. Diana watches, hidden among the treetops, as Hippolyta tells the son of Zeus to go with her love, and he ascends to Olympus in a flash of golden light. Some days later, the Amazons are holding a meeting at their senate, with one sister, Helene, saying she's fearful that extending a hand to man may result in man's hand answering back with weapons clutched. Diana replies that if they want to send a message of equality and peace, they can't cut themselves off from the people who need to hear it. The queen states that they need to learn more about man's world, and so decides to send her daughter as their ambassador. The next morning, Diana has entered the Temple of Hades, while her sisters wait outside to see her off. The princess enters the mausoleum of her namesake, Diana Trevor, and tells the statue of the hero that she now understands the responsibility of wearing her armor, and will make the woman proud by turning the imagery into a symbol of peace the world over, because a world that can create people like Diana, Steve, and Julia is worth saving. She exits to bid farewell to her mother, who's standing beside her daughter's packed duffel bag. Diana says she's worried about the queen, but Hippolyta replies that she doesn't need to be. She gives her the sandals of Hermes so she can easily travel between their worlds, and Diana promises to return whenever she can. Outside, Mnemosyne and Menelope watch as the princess departs, and when asked, the oracle declares that she's sure whatever Diana decides will add to the glory of Gaia. We see Diana back in Man's World, flying over Boston at night. We get snippets of Etta and Steve on a plane about to land and chatting about him resigning from the service, and Mindy Meyer, altogether too comfortable, lying on a couch, sharing a drink with a handsome young client, before returning to the Capitella's home. Vanessa tells her mother that the lights have gone out in her room, and there must be a short circuit. She comes up with one ridiculous excuse after another to get her mother to check it out, but when the professor finally enters, she's astonished to be greeted by Diana. She rushes to give the Amazon a huge hug, Vanessa proclaiming that she knew her mother would be surprised. And when Diana asks if she can stay with them again, Julia replies that they wouldn't let her stay anywhere else, welcoming her home. Let's go over the mythology first. When Diana talks about Heracles having held the sky in the past, that's a reference to his 11th labor. He was charged to get apples from the Garden of the Hesperides. So what he did was he went to Atlas the Titan, who, as punishment for, being on the losing side of the war between the gods and the Titans, was forced to hold the entire weight of the sky, so that it wouldn't come crashing down on the earth, which Heracles said he would hold for a while so that Atlas could go to the garden, which was tended by his daughters, and get some of the apples. Because, you see, the way this worked is, if you're the one holding the sky, you cannot let it go, not even accidentally, unless someone else is there to hold on to it for you. So, of course, when Atlas got back, he was not ready to take up that huge weight again. So Heracles was like, yeah, okay, sure, no problem, I'll hold on to it, but I want to adjust my cloak first so that it's helping pad my shoulders. Can you hold it for just a second while I do that? And so Atlas dropped the apples and grabbed onto the sky for a second, and Hercules snatched them up and ran off. And I know what you're thinking. You're probably used to seeing pictures of Atlas holding up the planet Earth. That's kind of a modern confusion thing. The Greeks, they knew that the Earth was round, but obviously they didn't have globes like we do today. So in the ancient statues, what you're actually seeing is Atlas holding up the celestial spheres, which is the ancient Greek philosophers' vision of the cosmos, where the Earth is at the center of the universe, and the stars and planets are all on concentric clear crystal spheres, kind of like the layers of an onion, and they rotate around the Earth. I'm not really sure I liked the idea that Heracles, of all people, is the first man to set foot on Paradise Island, but it was great to see that they were willing to forgive him so easily. I also liked Zeus and Hera's reconciliation scene, where they kind of renewed their commitment to each other. The only problem is, that's not going to last. Zeus has a wandering eye, and yeah, the odds of him staying faithful for very long are pretty much non-existent. This is the first mention we get of Etta being on a diet. She's apparently trying to lose weight because she is over the military's acceptable requirement standard guideline thing. I know that weight loss really is important for your health. I could stand to do it myself, to be honest. But I really don't like it when modern versions of Etta focus on that, since her true, original, classic 1940s form is just so completely comfortable in her own body and loves being in love with candy so much. It just doesn't seem right for the character. Didn't really care for the new relationships in this one, in case you couldn't figure that out. Steve and Etta is a little weird, but I don't dislike that one quite as much. But yeah, Heracles and Hippolyta, ugh. With their history, it just really doesn't sit right with me. Forgiveness is one thing, but that's taken it a little too far. One thing I found a little funny, the Amazons have a Colosseum, even though that was a Roman invention, and the Greeks were more about carving amphitheaters into the sides of hills. I liked the reconciliation scene with Hippolyta and Philippus, And the ending here, where Diana goes back to man's world, is just really great. Her returning to the Capitell's home is easily my favorite scene in this issue. It's so great to see them back together. So yeah, this issue, there was some good, some bad, a bit of both, so I'm going to balance it out and say 3 stars. Next up is the New 52. We have Wonder Woman Volume 4, Issue 13, Sin of the Father. Cover date is December 2012. Executive editor was Bobby Chase. Cover artist was Cliff Chang. Writer was Brian Azzarello. Penciler was Tony Akins. Inkers were Dan Green and Tony Akins. Colorist was Matthew Wilson. Letters was Jared K. Fletcher. And the editors were Matt Ileson and Chris Conroy. And I'm reading this from Wonder Woman Volume 3, Iron. It's night in Antarctica, and a group of people in parkas are looking through binoculars to see a 12-foot-tall giant of a man covered in bloody scars. One, called only Doctor, is said to have been right, but the Doctor replies that the giant's arrival was sooner than calculated, and they're not ready. A man called Duerson starts walking toward the giant, saying they have to be ready, despite the Doctor crying out that the figure doesn't understand English. Arms raised to show he's weaponless, Duerson tries talking to the man, but he only replies in an ancient, unintelligible tongue. The shorter figure says they've been waiting for him, and tries to say they're there to help, but before he can finish, the giant grabs him by the coat and bites the top of his head off. He drops the body to the snow and, now able to speak their language, tells the shocked audience before striding off that he is nameless, the crippler of souls, and the firstborn, and he doesn't need their help. At the newly redesigned Mount Olympus, Dionysus, god of wine, looks around at the new modern architecture. He sees War sitting against a wall, looking for all the world like a homeless man with a bottle, and the two exchange barbs before entering an outdoor swimming pool area where they meet Apollo, Artemis, Aphrodite, and Hephaestus. The new king of Olympus says he's called them together because they're all children of Zeus, although Athena refused to attend because she doesn't see the sun god's claim to the throne as legitimate. He tells his siblings of the prophecy about impending war, and that a child of Zeus will kill one of them and take the throne. It's pointed out that while they aren't the only sons and daughters of Zeus, they are the most powerful. But Apollo tells them that he recently saw one of their mortal siblings wield unbelievable power. Princess Diana, the last Amazon. Back in Wonder Woman's London flat, Diana and Lennox talk while Zola is curled under a blanket on the couch. Diana points out that they don't have the power of a god to travel wherever they need anymore, and Lennox suggests trying to get the aid of a demigod. He tells her that in the 20th century Zeus fathered 7 children, and a few of them might be willing to help. They're interrupted by Hera, delighted by her discovery of a rare and wondrous mortal dish called an ice cream cone. Her cry awakens Zola, who furiously bats the cone out of the deposed queen's hand and grabs her by the throat, slamming her to the ground. Diana pulls the girl off, saying she won't let her friend kill the goddess. She tries to explain that Hera is now defenseless, and she needs her alive to save her mother and Amazon sisters. Picking up where they left off, Lennox thinks one daughter of Zeus, Soraka, may be able to help them. She has the power of the wind, hears everything, and normally is constantly telling him things, but ever since he teamed up with Wonder Woman, she's fallen silent. He thinks she doesn't trust the Amazon because of her proximity to Hera, who has reduced the number of Zeus's 20th century offspring to 5. Diana decides that since Soraka won't come to them, she'll have to go to her. In the rubble of a war-torn town in Libya, a group of soldiers spot a cloaked woman approaching. She pulls back her covering, revealing herself to be Wonder Woman, and they open fire. She disappears, only to reappear floating above and behind them. She deflects their bullets and they flee, leaving her alone. The wind rattles the lid of a large clay pot, which the Amazon opens to find a small, terrified girl hiding inside. She says she was playing in the barrel and couldn't get out when the soldiers arrived, but the people of her village would have gone to their hiding place. She leads the superhero to a concealed door, which leads to an underground palace, and Wonder Woman carries the child in her arms as they descend the steps. A gust of wind blows the inward opening door shut, and the Amazon comforts the frightened child, saying she will protect her. The girl tells her that the palace just appeared one day, and that she was the one who discovered it, and that its king is long dead. Now it's the home of Soraka, but before Wonder Woman can ask any more, another rush of air brings 1,000 swords and knives flying at them out of the darkness. The superhero strikes them away furiously with just one arm as she holds the child in the other, but when she stops and looks down, she sees that one has embedded itself in the girl's chest. Blood streaming from her mouth, she says that Wonder Woman promised to protect her, and the Amazon says she's sorry. But then the small body crumbles to sand in her arms, and out of the pile at her feet rises a figure that can only be Soraka, saying she didn't believe the hero's promise as she grabs her by the throat with her skeleton arms. So yeah, this firstborn guy eating this dude's brain in order to learn English, that was really gruesome. We get this extreme close-up, and yeah, it was pretty darn disturbing. So this is the first appearance we have of Dionysus, god of wine, and his appearance was actually a little confusing at first. He looks fairly young, late teens, early 20s maybe, and has spiky orange sideswept hair, little pointy teeth, and a foxtail of all things sticking out of his back pocket. Honestly, he wouldn't look out of place in a Japanese anime cartoon. So I did my research, and it seems that in Thrace, Dionysus was said to have worn a coat made of fox skins, called the Bassaris. Ordinarily, he is depicted as kind of a portly figure, with leaves in his hair and an ever-present bundle of grapes that he's eating from. So I thought that was an interesting change. There's a lot of puns here on Olympus, especially coming from Ares, of all people. They talk about raising a new Olympus, and he says he would have rather raised it, R-A-Z-E-D. And when Apollo says that Athena isn't going to be there because she doesn't recognize his legitimacy to the throne, he says, oh, no justice, since, of course, Athena is the goddess of justice. I love the exchange here when Diana stops Zola from killing Hera. Even when her friend has been so traumatized, she won't let her do something that she's going to regret later. Okay, maybe not regret exactly, but she won't let her friend kill, even if she thinks it's justified. It's also good to know that flying is now a permanent part of Wonder Woman's repertoire, since I was wondering whether or not she'd still be able to do that, since the power was given to her by Hermes, the traitor. And the reveal that this little girl was actually Soraka was really well done. She looked like a perfectly normal human child, dressed in kind of a tunic. But then when she's in her demigod form, I guess, she's got death-pale skin, wild flowing black hair, pure white eyes, and her arms coming out of her sleeves are just pure bone. Anyway, overall, good issue. Enjoyed the little mini twist at the end, so I'm going to give it 3 stars. Next up we have the TV show, Wonder Woman Season 1, Episode 13, Wonder Woman in Hollywood. Air date was February 16, 1977, starring Linda Carter and Lyle Waggoner. Carolyn Jones played the Queen, Deborah Winger played Drusilla, Harris Yulin played Mark Bremer, and Robert Hayes played Corporal Jim Ames. We start out with Trevor, Blankenship, Diana, and Etta in a movie theater, being shown realistic footage of war by a Hollywood producer named Mark Bremer. He tells them this level of realism will be used in his new movie, featuring real war heroes recreating their most famous acts, and with ticket sales going to buy war bonds. He gets Blankenship's approval, and mentions he wants Steve to be featured in the film as well. The General agrees, saying it will be good for morale, and when Steve asks Diana about going with him, she doesn't understand the appeal of Hollywood. Etta is astonished, saying Hollywood is like paradise, to which Diana gives a knowing smile and replies that she could use a trip to paradise right about now. Back on Paradise Island, the Queen and Drusilla are planning the celebration of the 2000th anniversary of the Amazons' arrival on their island. The festival needs a queen, it seems, and since the Amazon Constitution forbids her mother from fulfilling the role, the obvious choice is Diana. Drew convinces her mother to let her travel to America to deliver the message to her sister, and soon she's flying her invisible plane over the Hollywood sign, leading to a montage of stock footage of 40s-era Hollywood set to, what else, Hooray for Hollywood. You know, that song they always play at the Oscars. On set, Diana watches them film Steve flying a prop plane, when she notices some scaffolding holding a large light start to bend. Even though it's seconds away from falling on the preoccupied crew, she still takes the time to run behind a storage container and spin into her costume before grabbing the metal pipe and bending it back into place. The director notices the light in his shot changing, and when everyone turns around, Yeoman Prince is leaning idly on the scaffolding. Drusilla, dressed in what passes for street clothes on Paradise Island, watches as autograph-hungry fans hound a celebrity walking from her car into the Warner Bros. Studio. One of them strikes up a conversation with the Amazon, who doesn't understand what's going on and thinks that stars are only found in the sky. But then a security guard mistakes her for someone starring in a movie about ancient Greece and leads her inside. Back on set, Diana is introduced to Corporal Jim Ames, another soldier starring in the film. The man is nervous about his acting, and she tries to encourage him before being called over by her boss, who asks her to get him some coffee since he's stuck in the plane between takes. She finds the refreshment table outside in a set made up to look like the Old West, and waves to Corporal Ames across the street before her sister finds her, and the two embrace. Just then, a car speeds up, and two men jump out and grapple with the corporal, trying to force him into the car. Diana tells her sister to stay put before spinning into her costume. She flings the attackers away, and they escape in the car as she tends to the fallen corporal, nearly running down Drew before her sister pulls her out of the way. Wonder Woman goes off to switch back to her yeoman's uniform, then helps Ames up, asking who might have tried to kidnap him. He doesn't know, then goes off to find a place to sit down, while Diana asks Drew what she's doing there. The teenager tells her how she needs to attend the festival, and Diana says she'll try to be there, but right now is worried about the film. She thinks someone is trying to sabotage the production, but now her sister needs to return home as their mother instructed. Drew tells her it'll be okay if she spends the night, so Diana decides to let her tag along to a party being held at Bremer's house that evening. There, Drew is introduced to the other two servicemen in the film, Lieutenant Bill Rand and Sergeant Harry Willard. Lieutenant Rand is led away by a blonde in a slinky dress, while Steve heads to the bar with the women and Ames, who he says he needs to keep an eye on until they discover the motive behind the attack. The blonde, named Gloria Beverly, chats up Rand, then suggests they go somewhere private. But once separated from the rest of the party, two armed men show up and lead the lieutenant away at gunpoint into a delivery truck. As the party ends, Steve asks Bremer about Rand, and he says he thought he saw him leave early with some starlet. But when they've all left, the producer calls for Gloria, checks that everything went well, and bids her goodnight. One of the kidnappers, Kurt, enters to report that things went perfectly. Bremer, now speaking in a German accent, replies that he has a new plan to capture Ames and the others, since Wonder Woman interfered. Soon the American soldiers will be on trial in Germany, and afterward, when the Nazis have won the war, he will control Hollywood. The next day on set, Bremer, switched back to his American accent, tells Steve and Diana that Rand is nowhere to be found. The Major tells his secretary they need to keep a close eye on Jim and Sergeant Willard, and Diana suggests that her sister stick around instead of returning home, since the girl has developed a crush on Jim and will certainly know where he is at any time. In fact, the two are currently out at a soda fountain, with Drew sucking down floats like an industrial vacuum. She goes to call Diana, and when she's gone, a couple of hooligans start harassing Ames. After learning from her sister that she can stay to keep an eye on Jim, Drew catches sight of the corporal getting roughed up, and so spins into her costume and throws the goons around. Jim runs out, so she switches back to civilian clothes and meets him outside, where she pretends she didn't see what happened, and he pretends he took out the troublemakers himself. After returning to set, Drew tells Diana she needs to talk to her, but they have to wait when the camera starts rolling. Sergeant Willard films an action scene, disappearing through a door, but when they go to do a second take, he's nowhere to be found. As the men try to figure out where he could have gone, Drew calls Diana aside and tells her about Corporal Ames lying to her, saying she thinks he's not very heroic for a war hero. The secretary is then called away, but before she goes, tells the teenager to find out as much as she can. Steve goes over his plans with Diana, totally unaware that the mastermind behind the kidnappings is right there, listening in. We next see Lieutenant Rand and Sergeant Willard having their blindfolds removed in the holding cell of a Nazi battleship. They're told they're in the Pacific, and will be leaving for Germany as soon as Ames and Trevor arrive. Back at Bremer's house, Kurt reports that the kidnapping went off without a hitch, but the producer says that because of Trevor's investigation, they need to speed up the mission, and he plans to capture both of the remaining soldiers at once. Drew and Jim are having dinner at a restaurant, when the corporal says he's going to tell her the truth about himself because he likes her. The medal he got? It turns out he'd been separated from his squad and was actually trying to surrender to a group of Nazi soldiers, but instead they threw down their weapons when they saw him, and so he was awarded for capturing a dozen men himself. He also admits to not being the one who fought those two guys who were harassing him that morning. He feels like a coward, but Drew lets him know how brave he was to tell her. Just then there's a phone call for him at the restaurant counter. He gets a shocked look on his face as he listens to the receiver, then rushes off with a hurried excuse to Drew. The following day, both Steve and Ames, who were carpooling to set, are late. We see them going down a forested road when they come across two men and a car pulled over with its hood up, so they stop to ask for directions. The men, one of whom we recognize as Kurt, pulls a gun on them, but when Steve tries to take them out, Jim grabs one of the dropped weapons and points it at the Major, ordering him to stop. On set, they wrap for the day when they hear about the discovery of Ames's abandoned car, and Diana and Drew head off together. Back in the battleship holding cell, Steve and Jim are under guard, and Steve asks the corporal how the Nazis got to him. Just then, Bremer comes in, revealing his true identity. Steve instantly figures out the whole ulterior motive for the movie, and Bremer tells him he'll be off for Germany the very next day. As the producer goes to leave, Jim asks about his parents. Bremer says they're safe, that he can see them that evening before they embark, and that they'll be set free if no trouble arises. We follow Bremer as he leaves, and quickly realize that what we thought was a Nazi holding cell is actually an enclosed set built on a soundstage, complete with a rack of costumes and a man running sound effects. We next see Diana investigating the woman Rand went off with before disappearing. Knowing she was an actress, the secretary goes to the casting office and looks through headshots. Bremer arrives at home, where Jim's parents are bound and gagged on his couch, then tells Kurt they will take their captives by truck to the rendezvous point to meet with a real U-boat, and will eliminate all unnecessaries like Jim's parents and even Gloria. Luckily, Diana finds the woman's portrait, and learns that Miss Beverly was personally recommended for a contract by Bremer himself, even though he claimed not to know her. She quickly spins into her costume and confronts the woman in her dressing room, using the lasso to confirm that Bremer is behind the kidnappings. She doesn't know where they're taking them, though, saying only that Bremer sticks to his home and the studio, and that he's got Studio 12 reserved. Wonder Woman and Wonder Girl break into the soundstage, finding the abandoned holding cell set. We get a quick shot of the men being transported in a truck, then back to Wonder Woman, who says the set must have been designed to discourage the men from trying to escape before they were all apprehended. They decide to check Bremer's home, and sure enough, we see the prisoners arrive, waiting for another truck to take them to the rendezvous point. Bremer takes Jim and Steve inside so the corporal can see his parents. Steve manages to break his bonds, but the producer pulls a gun on him. The Wonder Women run at top speed, arriving just in time to see the prisoner transfer. They leap into action, quickly taking out the spies and freeing the soldiers before heading inside. Wonder Woman tries to get to Jim and his parents, but Bremer fires and she cries out, clutching her shoulder. Steve rushes to her aid while Jim is furious, finally finding the courage to stand up to Bremer. He gets shot at, but Wonder Girl's wrist quickly moves to get her bracelet between the bullet and the corporal's chest. Bremer tries to run, but Jim tackles him, and then Steve helps pull the spy to his feet, congratulating the corporal on his bravery. Wonder Girl leads her sister, still clutching her shoulder, outside, but when they're out of sight, Diana straightens up, pulling her hand away and revealing that she was only faking, so Jim had a chance to demonstrate his courage. As the men load their captors into the truck, Ames tells Steve he wishes he could meet Wonder Girl again when the situation wasn't life or death, and the Major has the same sentiment for Wonder Woman. Back in D.C., Blankenship, Steve, Etta, Diana, and Drew are all in the theater watching the final cut of Steve's movie. They all agree it's a great film and will help boost morale for the Allies. Steve asks how long Diana is going to be on leave, and she replies a few days for an anniversary celebration. They all decide to go out to dinner first, and Steve tells Blankenship that the one thing he regrets is that the movie didn't include Wonder Woman and Wonder Girl, since they both helped out so much. He starts to regale Etta and the General with a story of Wonder Woman, but they say they've already heard it many times. He offers to tell the secretary and her sister, but when Drew says she's not interested, Diana chides her knowingly, saying the girl might someday grow up to be just like the superhero. So, yeah, just like the 40s comic, we once again have Wonder Woman in Hollywood the episode before the movie comes out. I promise you, this was not planned by me. This is some kind of weird, happy accident. One thing I realized with this episode is with Drusilla, we finally get the chance to see Diana being 100% honest. She finally has someone to talk to where she doesn't have to hide anything. She doesn't have to pretend to be Yeoman Prince, and she doesn't have to try to keep secrets as Wonder Woman. It's really refreshing. I love the rare chance we get to see her say what's actually going through her mind instead of having to figure out, now wait, is she being honest here or is this just part of her cover? There was a great running gag in this episode where neither Drew nor Diana knew what the word slinky meant. And there's a great exchange at the party where the producer says that he hopes Louis B. and J.L. will be there. And Drew gets this confused look on her face, and so he says to Diana, tell your sister who that is, and then walks off, and Diana's like, yeah, don't worry, I don't know who they are either. And, sitting here, I'm just like, yeah, that makes three of us. I guess they're some kind of famous Hollywood people from the 40s? I don't really know. Let me look them up. Okay, so Louis B. appears to be Louis B. Mayer, the co-founder of MGM Studios. But for the life of me, I cannot find who JL is supposed to be. It's just not enough information to go on. If anybody knows out there, feel free to contact me and let me know. Because I'm scrolling here through lists and lists and lists of Hollywood actors and actresses from the 40s, hoping to find the right initials, and I'm just drawing a blank. Harris Yulin, who played Bremer, makes our third Wonder Woman villain to also have appeared in Scarface, where he played Mel Bernstein. And Robert Hayes, who played Corporal Ames in this episode, was also the voice of Iron Man in the 90s Marvel cartoons. One thing I thought that was interesting was this movie was very obviously supposed to be produced by Warner Bros., the company that owns Wonder Woman, of course. They were on the Warner Bros. Set and working with the Warner Bros. Studio, and the Warner Bros. Logo was everywhere. And then I'm thinking here, when Bremer was revealed as a spy, I'm like, did they think this through, saying that one of their producers in the 1940s was secretly a Nazi? I'm not really sure that's the kind of thing you would want associating with your brand, but hey, okay then. The revelation that they weren't actually out at sea but were on set was pretty mind-blowing. I really liked that part, even if it didn't make the most sense in the world to go to all this trouble to make the guys think they were out at sea and then just pull them out and put them on a truck to actually go to the ocean. Drew's love of American fast food was hilarious. I think it was her first appearance where she first discovered the wonder that is ice cream. And in this one, she fell in love with hot dogs. Obviously, two things you can't really get on Paradise Island. And actually, come to think of it, we don't really know what they eat on Paradise Island. I mean, presumably it would be Greek food? Like the kind of stuff that the ancient Greeks would have eaten? I guess mostly olives and figs and fish, I guess? I don't really know. I'm not sure there's ever really been any focus on that. This episode marks the end of Season 1, and sadly is the end of the 1940s era episodes. The show had good ratings, but for some reason ABC delayed ordering a second season, so the production company Warner Bros. Decided to offer it to CBS instead. And CBS said, sure, we'll do the show on the one condition that we can change the setting from 1940s to the present, which at that point was the 1970s. So this is our last show with Etta and Blankenship. Steve will be back, but sort of in a different capacity. We'll cover that next episode. And this is also the last appearance of Wonder Girl, which is a little disappointing, but I am glad they brought her back for at least one more, if only so that her last appearance wasn't that horrible, horrible Feminine Mystique Part 2. Apparently they thought of doing a spin-off show with just her, but it didn't pan out. And also, Carolyn Jones will be replaced the next time we see the Queen. So yeah, a lot of endings here. Kind of bittersweet in hindsight, but the episode itself was really good, so I'm giving it 4 stars. So before we move on to news, we gotta talk about this Wonder Woman movie. And this isn't spoilers exactly, since I don't actually know what's gonna be in the movie, but this is more speculating, and my speculations may turn out to be true, or they may not. So, up to you if you want to go into the movie without even an educated guess as to what's going to happen. So I think we've got to confront the fact that the movie kind of has to have a downer ending. I mean, we know in Batman v Superman that she cut herself off from the rest of the world for 100 years. Whether that was going back to Paradise Island or just going into hiding, I don't know. But something happened that made Diana completely reject man's world for 100 years. And I will be rather surprised if it's anything other than the death of Steve Trevor. I don't want that to happen. I would prefer that that not be the case, but knowing Hollywood, that's probably what they're going to go with. also knowing Hollywood and the way that one trailer had the thing about, oh, she must never find out the truth about herself, I've got a really bad feeling that she is going to be revealed as the daughter of either Zeus or more likely Ares. Again, I hope that's not the case, but again, a Diana, I am your father shtick during the final confrontation would also qualify as making her cut herself off from man's world. At this point, I will be shocked if they have any hint of the traditional contest. I think they're going to go with the origin that they used in the Justice League cartoon in the 2000s, and they're just going to have her, take weapons and armor and just leave Paradise Island instead of being sent. So, I'm trying to be cautiously optimistic. Despite all this, the trailers look amazing, the footage looks amazing, the stuff that I have seen. I'm still cutting myself off from trailers and clips and stills as of last month. But the ones I have watched, whenever I see them, I get really excited. But then I remember that the trailers for Suicide Squad looked amazing, and the trailers for Batman v Superman looked amazing. We've got to face facts here. This is the fourth film in a franchise whose best critically acclaimed entry was Man of Steel, which was a very divisive movie among fans. Either you loved it or you hated it. I mean, part of me is still a little wary of the fact that they switched it from the original World War II to World War I. I mean, they say that they want it to be, a war that was less morally black and white, but I have a very, very strong suspicion that the fact that Captain America had a very successful period piece World War II superhero movie kind of made them think that they didn't want to seem like they were copying it too much. Now, there have been some screenings and people coming out of that, even though they're not supposed to give any details on the movie, they seem to be really excited, which is awesome. But then I remember watching videos of very excited people coming out of advanced screenings of the 2015 Fantastic Four movie, and yeah, that one was bad. I went to the theater knowing that was going to be a really awful movie, and I still left angry at how badly they managed to mess that one up. Now look, I don't want to cast any doubt on Patty Jenkins. Everything that I've heard her say has been 100% amazingly awesome. But as Suicide Squad showed, the producers and the studio are more than willing to completely re-edit a movie in a way that the director never originally intended. And if you doubt the power of editing even slightly, go look up the fake movie trailers where they make Mary Poppins look like a horror movie and The Shining look like a rom-com. It really is incredible how powerful that is. I mean, the original Star Wars, one of the best movies of all time. From what I hear, the first cut was awful, and it wasn't until they completely re-edited the movie that it became the beloved classic that it is today. And I know this probably comes across as overly pessimistic, but you have no idea how excited I was for X-Men The Last Stand and Spider-Man 3. I was so pumped for those movies. And even in the non-comics world, Aragon, I was such a huge fan of those books. I was so excited for that movie. And all of those, to one extent or another, ruined their franchises to the point where they had to start over from scratch. Well, except for Aragon. Aragon never recovered. Even the book fandom kind of died out after that movie. And really, that's the thing with movies. I mean, we love comics, we love books, but a movie is going to have so much more cultural impact than the best-selling comic or book. Well, okay, maybe not best-selling book, Harry Potter. Actually, no. Even with that, the movies had way more impact on pop culture than the books. the book version may be the original, but when you say Harry Potter to people, they picture Daniel Radcliffe, the guy who played him in the movies. That's just the way that movies work. They override the previous incarnation of the character, and their impact lasts an incredibly long time. I mean, DC came out with the Green Lantern in 2011, and it bombed, and now, they sort of have to come out with the Green Lantern for their new DC Cinematic Universe, but they've pushed it, all the way back to the back of the schedule, and they've made it, it's the Green Lantern Corps now, in an attempt to, distance themselves from the bad impression in most people's minds that movie gave of Green Lantern. So yeah, just like the Linda Carter show 40 years ago, this movie is going to define what most people think of as Wonder Woman until the next incarnation, which, if they mess it up badly enough, could be another 40 years. But then I go back and I watch the trailers, and they look so amazing, and the stills look amazing, and everything I'm hearing from Gal and Patty is exactly what I want to hear. So yeah, optimism, but still cautious, because we comics fans have been burned so many times. I figure hope for the best, but at the same time prepare just in case. Now, the day that I am recording this, the movie is coming out in just about 2 weeks. My plan for next episode is to still have the normal recaps and reviews of the comics and TV show, and then at the end, give my very fresh, very raw thoughts on the movie, just like I did with the Lego Batman movie. Okay, let's finish up with some news. So I'm not really going over reviews or trailers, but there are a couple new posters that are really, really awesome. There's one of Wonder Woman deflecting a bullet with her bracelet, and one of her with the magic lasso. And I'm literally a few minutes away from posting this episode, and I looked up Wonder Woman poster to get the proper link for these posters, and there's a brand spanking new one of Wonder Woman lifting a tank over her head, and it is just amazing. DC has also announced more details about Wonder Woman Day, which is June 3rd, 2017. There are going to be more than 2,000 comic book shops and libraries and bookstores that are going to host Wonder Woman events. There's going to be 2 special edition comics that you can get there. Wonder Woman Day Special Edition number 1 by Greg Rucka and Liam Sharp, and DC Superhero Girls Wonder Woman Day Special Edition number 1 by Shea Fontana and Yancey Labatt. There's going to be a bunch of Wonder Woman segments on DC All Access starting May 29, and they have available a Wonder Woman Day Activity Kit PDF, which is mostly for kids. It's like coloring pages and crossword searches and mazes and different things like that you can download and print out. Also, there is going to be a sale on digital comics on readingdcentertainment.com and the DC Comics app, and I would hope that would include Comixology. I thought that and the DC Comics app were somehow connected, but I'm not really sure. Lastly, if you are listening to this soon after it comes out, before Tuesday, May 23rd, then it is possible still for you to be a part of the music video for the Doubleclicks song Wonder, which is the outro music I use for Warrior for Peace. They want fan-submitted video clips of you holding up a sign that says what makes you a superhero. And you can find more information on their website. As always, I will include links to all of this stuff in the show notes, available on WonderWomanWarriorForPeace.wordpress.com. Okay, end of another episode. If you have any questions, comments, complaints, concerns, conundrums, or queries, you can of course email me at WonderWomanWarriorForPeace@gmail.com. If you're okay with your message being read on the podcast, please let me know. The podcast homepage is WonderWomanWarriorForPeace.wordpress.com. There you can find the RSS feed and promo, as well as the show notes and links to the iTunes, Stitcher, and Google Play feeds. You can look up the show on Facebook, YouTube, Tumblr, and Instagram under Wonder Woman Warrior for Peace, and on Twitter and Pinterest as Wonder Woman WFP. The intro music was Wonder Woman Theme, the Best Themysciran Symphony Dialogue Dance Mix by Taz Damien Devil. You can watch the full video on his YouTube channel. And the outro music is, of course, Wonder by the Doubleclicks, and you can find them on their website at thedoubleclicks.com. Next episode, I will be reviewing Wonder Woman Volume 1, Issue 2, Wonder Woman Volume 2, Issue 15, Wonder Woman Volume 4, Issue 14, Wonder Woman Season 2, Episode 1, and, of course, my thoughts on the long-anticipated Wonder Woman movie. Yay! Please be good! But until then, remember, sisters, hopes may fade, but wonders never cease.
'Cause you're not a quitter, you still believe the truth's in your lasso, your heart's on your sleeve, and when we're drowning in darkness, you'll save us all from God.